One of the things that I've learned in the last 5 years is that so much of our programming, so much of our unconscious mind is rooted in the body. And people store traumas, shocks, crisis, past experiences that are strong emotional charges. They store those in the body because every time we remember the experience, we're producing the same chemistry in the brain and body as if it's happening. So the body actually becomes conditioned into the past. And so the body, in its resistance, is clinging to the known and the familiar, even though we want our future to begin to change. So if you understand then that you can't think greater than how you feel when you're addicted to certain emotions, or when you've been thinking and feeling in the same cycles and feeling and thinking that you condition your body to become the mind of that emotion, then when feelings become the means of thinking, then for the most part people are thinking in the past. So the body is struggling because it's clinging to the known, because it doesn't trust the unknown. And so some people would rather hold on to their suffering or their pain than take a chance and possibility. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just becoming conscious of the process. And so when people begin to do this work, the first thing we teach them is about that elegant, generous present moment. And when you're truly in the present moment and you're totally focused, something amazing happens. You forget that you have a body. You forget about the people in your life. You forget about the things you own, your cell phone, your computer, your car, your home. You forget about where you're sitting, where you need to be, what place you have to go to, and you forget about time in and of itself. You forget, you take your attention off of time. And in that moment, you become pure consciousness. Now that is the elegant, generous present moment. And when you are truly in the present moment, that intelligence that lives within you and all around you is always present. It's always paying attention. And that's the moment there's an alignment between the subjective consciousness that's free-willed and the objective consciousness of the quantum field. You're looking right in the mirror. So then, in order for us to heal our bodies, we have to get beyond our bodies. In order for us to change some aspect of our identity or personality, we have to literally forget about ourselves. In order for us to change some problem or condition in our life, we have to forget about our present life and forget about the predictable future or the familiar past. And so you can only talk around this concept. But for a person who struggles with creating joy when they feel so much pain, and that they're working on trying to fake it until they make it, my advice is very simple. Work on getting beyond yourself. Now, there have been so many people in this work that have struggled and analyzed and tried to get beyond themselves and then tried to fake it and did all those things until they finally just followed the instructions and became nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time. Once you're that pure consciousness, the next question is, as consciousness, can you begin to put your attention on that field? Can you begin to pay attention to it? To begin to become aware of it, to become more aware of it, to experience it, to feel it, to stay connected to it moment after moment after moment. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So as your consciousness begins to become aware of the consciousness of the quantum field, and you're experiencing less separation. Remember, separation is three-dimensional reality. My senses fool me into believing you're over there and I'm over here and there's time and space between us. Three-dimensional reality. But as you begin to become pure consciousness, you begin to experience less separation. As you begin to put your attention on that field and stay present with it, that infinite space, and tune into it, and begin to become more aware of greater degrees of oneness and wholeness, the signature of that unified field, that energy that is organizing everything material, is intelligent love. It is very organized energy that we can only describe as love, but not like chemical love you have for your dog or your kids or your partner, but it's electric. It is so, it's the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling you'll ever have. It enlivens us. It is the very life force. It is the glue that's holding everything together. So then the moment you put your attention on it and you begin to connect to it, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. You're investing your attention and energy into that field, and you'll begin to experience greater and greater degrees of oneness and wholeness and begin to feel more love. And now you don't have to try, because the energy from these centers moves right into the heart. We've measured this thousands of times. And the person then is being baptized by the divine. And all of the struggles, all of the effort, all of the analysis, all of the bad meditations, all of the good meditations, all of the quitting, all of the complaining is worth it. Most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your five senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. And when it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment. The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories because it patterns or stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns, and then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. If you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say, I have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, then attitudes are just shortened states of being. You can feel good in the morning, you can feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, then the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I think there's a strong intellectual division going on in the world right now, because some people are holding on to old paradigms and old beliefs. And look, if we're measuring normal, we're going to get normal. I mean, for years, the idea that you couldn't grow new brain cells or couldn't change the brain in some way, that was a belief. And you know why? Because the scientist that was doing the experiment was studying rodents in an unchanging environment. How could there ever be any new connections or new circuitry or new brain cells if there's no new experiences? So I think in the age of information, in the age of technology, ignorance is a choice. And people are beginning to go, hey, I don't need my doctor to tell me about this. I can get on the internet and read it. Hey, I'm going to read a book on quantum physics, and I'm going to ask the mysterious questions. I'm going to step outside of convention myself. So once you step outside of convention, you will be considered foolhardy or insane, until you're able to produce some type of change, then you're considered a saint, a holy man, a mystic, a genius. Dare to be original. So I think the camp is divided in a very big way. That's the reason why I'm doing all the measurements. Because I want people to understand that the person that healed themselves of that condition, that traumatic brain injury, I want to show you that their brain is better. They're not just saying, I feel better. No, they are better. I want them to see that. Now, they didn't do that with a drug. They didn't do that with a therapy. They didn't do that with anything except by thought alone. And they made those biological changes. So, to answer the question, the camp is divided in many ways. The old paradigms, and then the new understandings and the new paradigms. And then there's this little kind of bridge in between, and we're only as good as the people that are willing to execute it. In other words, you got to be skilled at this, right? You got to be skilled at this. So if you're not skilled at it, we're not going to see any changes. So imagine 500 people or 450 people coming to an event, a workshop, and we are going to help them cross that river and to become conscious of their unconscious thoughts. You know, the ones that say, you can't, it's too hard, this will never happen, I can't change, I'm too this, I'm too old, I'm too that. Get beyond what their habits are, what they say unconsciously. Do they complain? Do they blame? Do they make excuses? Do they feel sorry for themselves? They're a program. They talk about others. Then look at their emotional states. Oh my God, I've been guilty for the last 30 years. I didn't even know I was guilty. It just felt like me. I've been unworthy. I didn't even know I was unworthy. It just felt like who I am. And all of a sudden, they start becoming conscious of that. And then they start creating a new change for themselves. And one by one, you start seeing these breakthroughs. You start measuring those breakthroughs. You have people on the stage talk about their breakthroughs, show their brain scan, show their heart rate monitor, show the energy change. And I guarantee you, just like an infection can create a disease in a community, I believe that wellness can be as infectious as disease. You start seeing traumatic changes happening in a small community of people who are outside of the conditioning of their environment. The science has to be done to measure it, but the measurements are only as good as our students. And if they're not doing the work, if they're not developing the ability to sustain brainwave states, if they're not getting beyond their analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And if a person doesn't get beyond their analytical mind, they'll still think within their belief. And I've measured enough brains to tell you that when you think within your belief, or you think within those limited emotions, you are going to make your brain worse, without a doubt. It's only when you transcend that analytical mind, you start falling in to those subconscious programs, and you begin to step into the autonomic nervous system, where you can change your chemistry and your biology. So then if our students aren't good at doing that, then it's still a philosophical concept, pie in the sky principles. But what we want to do is we want to give people the knowledge, the information, and blend the sciences of possibility, whether it's quantum physics or neuroplasticity or neuroendocrinology or epigenetics or whatever it is, hormonal changes, psychoneuroimmunology. We want to give them the information and have them